I think we're both focusing on different aspects of the religious experience. And I'm coming in as a social psychologist, looking at its social effects, and you're coming up as a clinical psychologist.
But you're also not writing it off as like a superstitious equivalent to rationality. Like you're trying to tie it to something that's deeper.
We evolved to be religious. This is
so
part
that's
of our nature.
So that's the first issue so you think that's a reasonable proposition. Mm-hmm. All right, so then the question is, what exactly does that signify? So let me try running something else by you.
Okay.
You're interested in processes of natural selection. Now, so I made the proposition a little earlier that we are doing something like collective imitation of the ancestral spirit. That's what ancestor worship is. If it unites a culture, something like that. You reflect your father, he reflected his father, etc., all the way back. Mm-hmm. And the only way that we can be in agreement about something is if we share a lot of our presuppositions. I mean, we can differ to some degree, but we have to have a shared personality to comprehend one another. E.O. Wilson said, if we could talk to ants, we wouldn't have anything interesting to say to them.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, our similarities and our differences make communication possible, but the similarity is something like, well, it's our participation in our shared culture, even our shared language.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you are on a team with someone, if you're on a boat that almost capsizes and you and 7 other passengers, you don't speak any languages in common, but yet you struggle together, you'll be friendly forever, or especially if you do sort of speak each other's language, you can communicate a little. So again,
that's okay. I'm not trying to localize it to a specific subculture.
Okay, well.
Okay, well,
I just meant I'm not sure we need common beliefs in order to feel that we're part of one. I think we need to move together, face a common enemy together. I just don't put as much stock in belief.
What do you think unites us if we face a common enemy together? Then
I think we evolved to have the ability to go into team mode very quickly. Mm-hmm. And this is why teams and the army and other places can do a really good job of suppressing racial animus, because race doesn't matter when you're on a team.
Right. Okay. So that's fine. That's fine. So let's take the example of a team. That's perfectly acceptable to me, because teams can be of any size, essentially.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a central, what would I say? The team has a personality, mm-hmm. in a sense, that's fragmented and represented by each of the players on the team. Mm-hmm. So there's a unity that the team consists of that's represented in each of the players. And that's what constitutes the team element of it.
Okay.
So when we talk about personality, it's hard to say exactly what we mean. We mean something like an animating spirit, a pattern of action, a pattern of perception, something like that. There's no reason to assume that can't be shared between people. And I think that's the kind of seizure that you're talking about when you see people collectively participate in something they regard as sacred.
Okay, that could be.
Okay, that seems reasonable. The question would be then, what's the gist of that central uniting principle? The reason I'm asking this in part, you'll appreciate this, I think. There's a claim, quite common at the moment, that the central animating principle of Western culture is power.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's a popular claim.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
I encounter it every day.
Right. What's the appropriate counterclaim? That there is no central animating spirit, or that that's not it?
That I face this a lot. And I think the response is to say, sometimes power matters. And there are those who believe that everything is sexuality, and sometimes sexuality matters. And there are those who believe that everything is money, and sometimes money matters, and sometimes self-esteem. People are complicated.
Sometimes pain, sometimes
that's
joy,
right.
and
that's
like
right.
sometimes jealousy. Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so
right. People whose first response to everything is power structures, power structures, power structures. You kind of know what they think, because it's and
you might know how they act too.
Yeah. So if you think that anything, whether it be the Western tradition or college, is all about power, that's just sad.
Well, it's also completely I've thought this through, and then I thought about all the people that I've admired in my life who were successful. And so those would be people that I'd like to imitate, or at least I respect. And that seems to be a reflection of something like, a low level of awe. They weren't
admiration.
They weren't driven by power.
That's right.
They were driven by competence and generosity.
That's right. That's right. And there you go. And so this is actually one of the hallmarks of a religion is people are committed to something that's obviously not true on its face. And the people who are really committed to this religion, that everything is power, this sort of Michel Foucault religion, they even interpret family life as being about power. That my relationships with my kids is primarily about my power. I mean, that's just bizarre.
And marriage.
That's right. Because I'm a man and my wife's a woman. Therefore, I must be motivated to have power over my wife. And I must feel something in common with other men because we're all men. We're all trying to maintain the power structure. I mean, this is far wackier than saying there was this guy and he was killed and he came back to life 3 days later. I mean, this is just a matter of faith. And so the fact that it is intruded so deeply into the academy now, again, not in most departments, but in, some of the departments that you and I both know, this is the religion. Everything's about power.
Yeah, well, we don't seem to have been able to put forward a very good counterclaim.
But I think it's as we were talking about with Steve, the good counterclaim is something which you have to sort of reason through, and it's about process more than any particular person, and we need equal treatment in front of the law, and we need all these things, and it's not as inspiring.
Oh, yeah, but there's another problem with it too. It's not like I don't have sympathy for that viewpoint, and there's nothing wrong with a reasoned argument. But look, whatever's at the bottom of the woke movement is critical of the processes of reason themselves, right?
Because everything is white supremacy.
Well, everything is up for grabs, at least.
Right.
So it's a radical critique of Enlightenment thinking. It's also an attempt to identify Enlightenment thinking specifically with Western European thinking, which I think is a great mistake, but it doesn't matter. I don't think that it isn't obvious to me that those merely rational responses are going to do the trick.
No, in general, not. But something that I've begun to think a lot about is the importance of specifying the institution or the domain before you say anything else. And so we can talk about, will a rational argument persuade people? And if we're talking about like on planet Earth, or just, out on the public square, your odds are not very good. And so the trick to having a good society is one in which there are domains within which people have a set of, be it professional norms or norms about how we do things. And so the norms in a college seminar class should be very different and much more generous and much more about building on each other's arguments and critiques than it is on Twitter. And part of what's changed, part of why I keep saying the world is so different after 2012 than it was before 2009, is that social media knocked down all the walls between different domains, and now the norms within which a reasoned discussion among people who have basic respect for each other and are tied together, at least as fellow students or fellow jury members or whatever. When that goes away and everything is just the public square, well, then, we're not really able to have reasoned conversations anymore.